What is going on, everybody, in Wrestling Review Society Facebook page, YouTube page, Brothers of the Belt, WCW Nation, and Generational Wrestling Society? If you have seen any of my posts the last couple days, and if you know how to read right there, you know who our special guest is tonight. This man has literally done everything there is to do in professional wrestling. Worked for three of the most major companies that you can think of. Currently works for the NWA. Is running a wrestling school. I mean, the man just there's nothing that I can tell you about this man that he can't tell you better. So I'm not even going to try to not do him the justice. I'll just wait for him to get on here. But before we do, I'd like to plug our sponsors. Once again, you are watching this on Wrestling Review Society YouTube page and Facebook page. When we hit 2,000 members, we are having a current giveaway. All you have to do is join Wrestling Review Society Facebook page and YouTube page to be eligible for that 100% random giveaway. Also, our sponsor, A-Rock Designs. As most of you know, she makes all the custom shirts, hoodies, cups, everything you guys see going around. And her product for the month is this beautiful bullet tumbler, decorated with the sign of the flag. As you know, we love our country, and it actually has the Constitution written in the flag. So if you want to get your hands on anything like this or anything customizable, we do offer them in bigger ones. Make sure you hit up A-Rock Designs on Facebook for that. And once again, the groups that allow us to stream in their group, Brothers of the Belt, WCW Nation, Generational Wrestling Society. With that being said, guys, it's time to bring on why all of you decided to come here tonight. So please help me in welcoming our very special guest, Mr. Ken Anderson. Mr. Anderson, how are you tonight, sir?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing amazing at the fact that you're here.
Quarantine. So my wife and I are just playing video games and watching old wrestling.
That sounds like the ideal life for every person watching this show right now. A little backstory before we get started, and I've told most of my friends this, and I told you this when we were coordinating this interview. So as a child, I was able to get autographs from certain wrestlers, not many, but my first time as an adult, so when I was in the military, I took leave to go to an event called WrestleCade. And the very first autograph I got from a professional wrestler, you guys guessed it, right here. This thing is 4 years old, right about 4 years old. Ken Anderson. So,
was I an asshole to you?
No, but we did talk about the asshole gimmick for a little bit. And right here is the picture from where I got to meet Mr. Anderson. So, starting out with the interview, you were on the independent scene for roughly 6.5 years before we saw you in your first major company. How did you step into professional wrestling? Like, where did you get your start training, and what led you to professional wrestling?
I found a wrestling school in Green Bay. I was living near Green Bay at the time, and I wasn't a big wrestling fan growing up, and then I sort of was, my hand was forced. I was at a friend's house one night, and he sort of said, "We're watching wrestling tonight." And I happened to take a shine to this bald-headed son of a bitch with throwing up middle fingers and drinking beer and beating the shit out of his boss. Can I swear on here? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay. I suppose I should ask you first.
No, you have the green light to say whatever you want, sir.
Okay. And I got sucked into everything. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I was completely hooked. My wife and I, just about 30 minutes ago, we watched WrestleMania 14, the match between Austin and Michaels, where Shawn Michaels' back is just completely screwed up. You can see it. He can barely move. But that was my first WrestleMania that I ever watched.
And so
at that point, I was just a huge fan. I had become a fanboy like overnight. And then I found out you could go to wrestling school, so I looked that up, found one in Green Bay, and I happened to be my trainers were opening a wrestling school. I was their first student, and I trained for 9 months, had my first match, and then I just started hitting the independents and trying to get as much exposure as I could. Yeah, about 6 years later, I got the call finally.
So, just while we're talking about yourself and wrestling schools, you actually run a wrestling school now, correct?
Yes, that's correct. In
Uh,
Minneapolis,
yes, and that's the Pro Wrestling Academy, correct?
the Academy School of Professional Wrestling.
I got you. So, what's the day-to-day process for running a wrestling school? How are you hands-on every day involved with it? Do you have trainers there, or how does that work on your end?
It is just me for the most part. I occasionally do have like advanced students. If I need to be with my kids or somewhere, I just can't make it one of the nights. We'll have like a captain's class. Some of our more advanced students, or from time to time, I have people that will come, local wrestlers that will come and help out. Like Greg Gagne has been stopping by and sort of helping out, which is really cool for the students to be able to sit under his learning tree. Wayne Bloom has helped out in the past. He lives in the area. Arya Davari, Arya lives here in town, and he was actually, when we opened up the school, he was one of our trainers. But since he's a little busier, so he can't really make it to the academy. But our schedule is Monday through Thursday, and I train the students. We have classes now from 5 to 7 p.m. and then 7 till 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday. So it's 4 hours of instruction, and then I do open gym after that, where I let them just, they can either sit and watch tape, or they can roll around in the ring, work on the stuff that we went over in class that day. So,
Sounds like an absolutely amazing time. I've actually I've done a good bit of homework on you. I've seen videos of your academy, and the facility looks amazing. I particularly like all the grunt style stuff. As you can see right here on this shoulder, I'm a huge grunt style supporter. You put a jacket on there, bud.
I did. Well, it's one of my academy hoodies, and I do have grunt style. Did make us some academy hoodies, but
Nice. I would like to take this chance to let everybody know that we are using the platform StreamYard. Therefore, we are able to see viewer comments. So if you have any questions for Mr. Anderson that you'd like me to ask for you, feel free to go and send those in. All you have to do is click the link above and grant StreamYard permission to use your name and your photo. And we'll be able to see exactly who we're talking to. If you don't do that, it's just going to pop up like this. So Facebook user says, Anderson, I still imitate him from time to time to aggravate my wife. King of the mic. I think when you first came onto the scene, there wasn't a single wrestling fan who didn't say their name twice. Personally, I did your entrance every single time you came out. So just while we're talking about that, what creative process went into you announcing yourself the way you did?
When Paul Heyman got to OVW and took over, he took over for Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette left. He put me on TV a lot in the first couple of weeks, and then I think it was the second or third week he suggested that I go out to the ring, cut the ring announcer off, and sort of berate him and do my own introduction. And I was a basketball announcer when I was in high school, and I used to use the typical radio voice. And somewhere along the way, somebody said, "Hey, you should say the last name twice, like the old boxing announcers used to do." And I started doing it. It was, that portion of it was a hit. And so when Paul suggested that I go out and do my own introduction, it just sort of like popped into my head, and I hit my last name twice. When I came back through the curtain, the biggest piece of feedback I got was, keep doing that. Like, when you said your last name twice, that's different. So that stuck. And it's weird because about 2 or 3 weeks later, I was on TV for WWE. I was making my debut, and I really didn't change anything. It just goes to show that sometimes you just have to keep, finding something that works for you, something that's unique. And it can be the smallest little thing. I started saying my last name twice, and otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you today.
So how did it feel when, obviously, I can only speak from a fan's point of view, but I imagine anytime you're doing something creative or anytime you're doing something that you want to get over with the crowd, there's always that question of, is this going to get over or is it not? How was it the first time when you went out there to say your name, and before you said it the second time, the arenas were just erupting, cutting you off, saying it before you did or along with you? So how was that feeling, seeing that what you came up with was getting over massively?
It was a great feeling, and I would sit behind, I would sit backstage, and as people start to file in, when they open doors for the shows, people are filing in, and they're generally, woo, woo. If you've been to I imagine you've been to a live show before.
One or
You know
two.
what I'm talking about. And it was the woos mixed in with Kennedy. So, and then the other thing that I noticed was like the boys in the back were doing it, and the production people were doing it, to the point where like I would turn a corner and see somebody, and they would do it, and then I would walk into another room and somebody would do it. It was like it was never annoying. Let me tell you that. Like it was a good feeling.
Very nice. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, like I said, I had the chance to meet you at an event called WrestleCade, which is held every year after Thanksgiving in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And when I first came up to you, you shook my hand. You were very nice to me, and I told you I loved the asshole gimmick, and you told me that you had pitched it to somebody else who was the head of your previous company, and you said he did not like it. Did he ever express what his problems were with it?
Well, it wasn't that. I don't think it was that he didn't like it. It was just that the WWE had recently gone to a strict, family-friendly entertainment, and he actually, on the day where they changed my name from, because I debuted on Velocity as Ken Anderson, and then 2 or 3 weeks later I debuted on SmackDown as Mr. Kennedy. And we sat down during the day, we kind of went through that process. He told me he wanted me to come up with a new name, and then he asked me, amongst a bunch of other questions, he said, do you have any catchphrases or anything like that? And I said, nice guys finish last. Thank God I'm an asshole. And he kind of like smirked a little bit, and he's like, we can't use that. Okay, I kind of figured. And, a funny story was John Laurinaitis was in there, and he suggested that I call myself Adam Hole or something like that, where I could actually say, hey, I'm an a-hole, and it would be technically correct. I'm glad I didn't go with that, but he chose Kennedy. And then, so fast forward 2 years, 3 years later, when I'm going to win the Money in the Bank briefcase at WrestleMania, and Michael Hayes came up to me during the day and he said, hey, not trying to draw comparisons here or whatever, but like, we want you to cut a promo after you win the match, after you get to grab the briefcase. And we want it to be like your Austin 3:16 moment, when Austin cut that promo at the end of King of the Ring.
And he coined that phrase that made him so much money in the future.
Yep. And so I immediately, my mind went there, and I was like, it's WrestleMania. I can get away with swearing, probably. It's just asshole. I'm not saying motherfucker. But the biggest mistake, I swear, one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career was right before we went to film it, I said, hey, let me just run this by you. And I ran my promo by Michael, and he said, and it was, nice guys finish last. Thank God I'm an asshole. And he said, no, you can't do it, man. And, I try to tell my students this now. It's sometimes better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission, because once you ask for permission and you're denied, you can't do it. Had I done it and they said, hey, you're not supposed to say that, I go, oh, I'm sorry, it just blurted out. Okay,
But it's already out there.
Then it's out there, exactly. And then okay, fast forward. My promo was just kind of lame, dull, boring, nothing special. And then fast forward to I'm in TNA, and they sort of gave me the reins. They loosened up the reins on me a lot and sort of let me go out there and say pretty much whatever I wanted within reason. And I just hit that promo without asking anybody. I hit that in one of my promos. Then the following day at TV, Vince Russo had written into the script. He said something like, because I was tagging with Jeff Hardy at the time, and I was like, Jeff Hardy has his fans. He calls them the creatures of the night. I got my fans too. I call them Anderson's assholes. And it wasn't too long before people in the crowds and arenas were chanting, "We are assholes. We are assholes."
The chants, the signs, they were everywhere.
Had I been able to say that, I don't know. It's a possibility that had I been able to say that at WrestleMania 23, that it would have caught on. And with the WWE marketing machine behind that,
So, we have some questions coming in from the audience, and this actually goes along with one of the questions I was going to ask. You're one of the very few people to have a massive WrestleMania moment in winning the Money in the Bank briefcase. So one of my good friends, Eddie Williams, who makes all of my custom belts, Eddie, love you to death, man. He says, what was the plan if you were to cash in the Money in the Bank successfully, if there was one? One thing I'd like to point out, you were the very first person aside from Rob Van Dam, who announced maybe a week early, but you actually announced in a year in advance you were going to cash in at WrestleMania.
Sorry, here I lost you for a second. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot hear you.
Okay. So.
Should I hang up and call back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, guys. So, Mr. Anderson is. Okay, great. All right, so little technical difficulties, guys. But question from Eddie Williams says, what was the plan for your Money in the Bank cash-in if you cashed in successfully, if there was one?
And what were you saying? I was the only guy to what?
You were the very first guy, aside from Rob Van Dam, who announced a few nights or maybe a week in advance, but you actually announced a year in advance, I'm cashing this in at WrestleMania. Was that always the plan, or was that just you trying to swerve everybody and sneak one in there?
No, that was the plan. I think I found out about that the day after WrestleMania, when I think I might have said it on Raw or SmackDown. I can't remember if I was on Raw or SmackDown at the time, but whichever show I was on, I stated that. No, I was on SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was going to cash it in. That was the plan, was for me to cash it in at WrestleMania the following year. And then about a month or two later, I got called into the office after a TV taping. And it was Vince and Stephanie. And I remember as I was walking in, Batista was leaving. And he came up to me and he gave me like a big hug. And he was like, dude, congratulations. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you'll find out. And then he bounced. I walked in and, it was presented to me that Undertaker was injured severely and he was going to have surgery. He was the champion at the time. So, he said, we don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but next week, this was a Tuesday night after SmackDown taping. And they basically were setting me up for the following week. They said, next Tuesday at SmackDown, you're going to come out and challenge Undertaker to a match. He'll already have been beaten up by some other means, and you'll just basically top him and cover him, and we'll have a new champion. You'll be our new champion. And okay, so I went home, and I remember I went out and I had a couple of drinks with some of the guys in the office that night, and they already knew about it because I didn't go around telling people that this was what's going to happen. I don't want to jinx myself. And I remember those guys, sort of celebrating a little bit, like, "Hey, congratulations, you did it." And the next weekend, I think it was a Friday or a Saturday, I had a house show in Poughkeepsie, and I just took a normal back bump, and I felt something, pop in my triceps, and I rolled out to the floor, and I remember Finley came out, and he looked at me, and he goes, "That doesn't look good." And by the time I got downstairs, my arm had swollen so much that I couldn't bend it, and it was starting to change color, which, bruising takes a long time to usually change. It's like, sometimes the bruise doesn't show up for 5 or 6 days, right? It was changing colors right away. I remember Hornswoggle drove me to Erie, Pennsylvania that night. He took me to the hospital. I was given an MRI, and then I just sort of was told, "Go back to your hotel room and just sit tight, and we'll give you the information when we get it." So the next day, I'm just chilling, and I get a phone call from Stephanie, and Stephanie says, "Ken, unfortunately, you tore your triceps off the bone, and you are going to have surgery. You're going to be out for probably 8 to 10 months. Unfortunately, Taker is still hurt, and we need to get this title off of him. So we're going to send the Vince's jet is on its way to pick you up. You're going to hop on the corporate jet. You're going to fly to Penn State, where Edge is going to challenge you on Raw, and then he's going to take it from you, and then he's going to do what you were supposed to do tomorrow night." Sorry, it wasn't like she was super nice about it. And, in my head, I was like, I remember thinking to myself, like, I have a year to cash this in. I'm going to be gone for 7 or 8 months. Shouldn't I just hold on to it? And then, when I'm healthy, I can. Is there another way that you guys can maybe? But I didn't say it. And in hindsight, I think I should have. I should have at least presented an alternative. So then the next day I went. Edge challenged me for the briefcase.
I remember that match very, very vividly. You were attacked on the ramp on the way down. You slid in. The ref asked if you could go. You said yes. And I think the match from bell to bell was right around 10 seconds, took a spear and a pin.
It was like Santino Marella's, a little longer than Santino Marella's Royal Rumble appearance.
Yeah, so at least you didn't Santino it. No, go ahead.
So then that was the deal. I remember Vince asking me during the day, like, "How much can you do?" And I was like, I can't move my arm, so it's going to have to be like spear. That's it. So yeah, he attacked me on the ramp, rolled me in the ring, ding, ding, ding. As soon as I heard the bell, I turned. He speared me, 1, 2, 3, rolled back. They flew me to Birmingham, Alabama the next day to work with Dr. Andrews. Dr. James Andrews handles tons of college football. He's one of the best surgeons in the country, and works with NFL players and all professional sports types and people in the WWE. And I remember he came in the room and he started grabbing my triceps, and he was like, "I don't think this is a tear." And I said, "Excuse me?" He goes, Yeah. I don't feel. Usually, you can feel where there's a tear in there, and I don't feel a tear. And he said, "I can't find your MRI though, so I really can't. I'm going to have you do another MRI," which sucked because I'm pretty claustrophobic. So MRIs are like the worst thing in the world if you've ever done one.
Absolutely.
I did another MRI, and then sure enough, he came back and he said, "No, it's just basically like a large hematoma. It's pop some blood vessels in your triceps in just the right spot, and it just bled internally. You'll be out for I think it was 4 weeks." He said 4 weeks, and you'll be back. So,
So it was you got the information just in time to go through with the losing the briefcase. And I'm really glad you decided to tell that story, because when I announced I was going to be hosting you in an interview, one of the things everybody asked was, why did they take the briefcase off him? I heard he got in trouble. I heard he did this. So I'm really glad you're able to clear that up. And it makes sense now because everybody's like, why would they squash the Money in the Bank holder? But now it makes sense. You couldn't work. You were injured. I'm really grateful you decided to tell that story.
And the thing about pro wrestling, it's 52 weeks a year, and I think people often forget that. Just think. I believe that the job of a writer in a company like WWE or AEW, especially WWE though, because they have so much programming. They've got 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, all the online content, 205 Live. They have to think about what they do one pay-per-view a month. And plus, they got it's just crazy. It's really hard to keep coming up with. You look at a normal sitcom, or what are they, 22 episodes in a season?
Mm-hmm.
Film, and then they take 6 to 8 months off and go recharge their batteries and stuff. But the thing about wrestling too is that, like, when people get injured, that machine needs to still keep rolling. So they just sort of have to and just sort of make rapid decisions.
And they have to have backup plans for backup plans for backup plans.
Exactly.
It's like
it happens fairly regularly where one guy gets injured. They've got a monster push planned for somebody, and then injury occurs. So they then go with this guy over here, and then that guy gets injured, and it's just
like
in this business.
It's like the famous phrase, there's no off season in professional wrestling. Another question we have coming in from the audience is from my good buddy Pierce Austin. I'd like to give him a shout out just really quick. If you guys haven't checked out Multi-Continental Wrestling Alliance, MWA on Facebook, he just did an amazing interview with Tim Storm, an NWA legend. Feel free to go check that out on YouTube. But comment from Pierce says, who in the WWE did you find was difficult to work with, and who did you enjoy working?
I cannot think of anybody off the top of my head that was difficult to work with. I think pretty much for the most part, if you've made it to the WWE, there's a reason for that. Most people that are in the WWE are there because they're good, and professional. I think, especially I notice this on the independents sometimes, where people tend to forget that it's the wrestling business. And it's a business just like any other business, and you have to present yourself as a professional in the way that you talk to people. If you're trying to get a job with a company, you need to send them professional-looking resumes and videos or links to videos and things like that.
So you have covered so much in your career up to now, and I say that as in you're not done yet. You're still going. You're still doing everything there is to do in professional wrestling. I want to get to some other things that you've done. So my last WWE question for you would be, although you weren't able to capture the world title in WWE, you did win the United States Championship. How did it feel being a champion for the largest wrestling company that you grew up a fan of, and now fast forward all these years, you are one of the champions, one of the top guys for this company?
It's obviously a cool feeling, and it's where all the hard work pays off. And yes, the titles are props at the end of the day. However, when somebody is given that title, or one of the titles, it's you're the company ambassador, at least for the time being, right? They thought highly of you enough that they would bestow that upon you. So that's a cool feeling. But I think, in hindsight, looking back, especially on my WWE career, when I got there, it was like I went from, God, I want to be there. I just want to work every single day. I want to wrestle every day. I want to do this for a living. To I'm on the road 5 to, I think the most I was ever on the road was 21 days, or we did 19 shows in 21 days. We did an American tour, and then we left from Minneapolis and we went and we did like a 7 or 8 country tour of Europe. And then we came back and did, I don't know, I think we did a pay-per-view while we were over there, and then we came back and did, you know, a Raw, SmackDown loop. So it was like I said, 19 shows in 21 days or something like that. Crazy. Where were we headed with that?
No, I was just asking you, you know, growing up a fan of the WWE, and now you are one of the champions for WWE. And, you know, the thing is, yes, I get this all the time. You know, spoiler alert, everybody. Wrestling is predetermined. Okay, it's a storytelling art. But here's the thing: when you have, and everybody always says championships are props or it wasn't a real fight. Here's the thing: when you have a company like the WWE coming up to you and says, "We're putting the title on you because you're not one of the guys, you're not one of the best, you are the best guy for this," that right there is the victory, is knowing that you worked your ass off to be one of the best and now you are recognized as the best. That's where the reward is from a fan's point of view.
Yeah, and from a wrestler's point of view, it's the same thing. I mean, yes, we work together as a collective team, but I mean, we are individual wrestlers too, and like, you know, I'm in charge of my brand. It's not like somebody else is in charge of that. I was gonna say, the reason I was telling you about all the traveling and stuff was that 4 years that I was there was such a whirlwind that there are times where somebody will remind me of something that happened, somebody I wrestled, and I'll just like, I forgot that I did that. I forgot that I was in that country or something like that, because it was just so, you know, you're always moving. There's a lot that I can't remember, and I wish that I would have, because when I first got there, I was just so excited and I loved every minute of it. And then it starts to become a job like anything else, and it's not like I'm not saying it's a tedious job that I don't want to be at, and it's, oh God, I don't want to go to work. I never felt like that a day in my wrestling career. But it is a job, and you start to just look at it as a normal job. This is my job. And
so moving from the WWE, getting into your TNA career. Now, you've said in other interviews and you said in in-ring promos that stepping into TNA, the reins were loosened. You had more freedom to present your brand and yourself the way you wanted to. One of my first questions for you is, being in TNA and having that freedom, did you find it easier to work as a babyface or as a heel?
I mean, I like both. I prefer heel, although I feel like when you do your job as a heel, like Vince asked me this the first day. He's like, "Do you think you should be a heel or a babyface?" And I said, "Well, I feel like, you know, it's way harder to get somebody to genuinely like you. If I go out there and try to, come on, guys," to the crowd, which is not me, they're gonna shit all over me, you know. Whereas it's easier to earn their respect as a heel, and then you sort of, they might not like you, but they'll respect, and they get it. They want to play along, you know, good guys versus bad guys.
Now, the reason I asked that question is because with the asshole gimmick, I feel you had the best of both worlds in a sense that you were over with the fans, so you had the babyface portion of it because the crowd absolutely loved you. But at the same time, you portrayed yourself as this asshole gimmick, which means you could go out there and literally say things that your typical babyface wouldn't have ever said.
Yeah, and that was sort of that was really my idea in the first place. Sort of the best way I can describe it. I'm not comparing myself to him, but like the Eddie Guerrero thing, the lie, cheat, and steal. He cheated in every single one of his matches, but he was a babyface because it was funny, it was entertaining, and And usually the heel had cheated enough in the first place that, Eddie was just like, it was just basic payback by the time he did it.
Now, and I know we said we were moving on to TNA, but just while you bring up Eddie Guerrero, you actually faced Eddie Guerrero in his final match. Do you have any stories or funny stories about Eddie and the time you spent on the road with him?
Just that, it was a pretty cool deal to be able to. It was probably it was my first few months with the company, where I started riding with them, and I remember the night that the last night I saw him, we were riding together. It was me, him, and Chris Benoit. And first things first, after he threw the chair to me and the ref turned around, I ended up hitting him, and I hit him pretty hard with that chair. And I remember, like, when we got back, he was like, "Oh, brother, you brought that chair, didn't you?" which he had told me to do, and he wasn't complaining. He was just like, "Oh, yeah, you brought it." So I kind of felt a little bad, like, well, maybe I swung it a little too hard. But and then that night, we went out to a steakhouse. I believe we were in Indianapolis, and he and Chris were telling me, "Hey, next week is your first overseas tour. Oh, we're gonna mess with you so bad when you're you're gonna wake up and your eyebrows is gonna be shaved off." And they were trying to get me riled up and worried. And then the next week we had a joint show. It was SmackDown and Raw in Minneapolis, and I remember pulling into the building, and as the guy came to park my car, he told me that Eddie was found dead in his hotel room that morning. It was just like, that was a rough day. That was a really, really rough day.
Yeah, as I can imagine. And it's one of those things that sitting at home watching it, I felt it through the TV, and Eddie rest in peace, and such a great performer. And I'm just very fortunate that I was alive during the time he wrestled, so I can witness how good he really was. But switching to a much lighter note, back over to TNA from Piers, and this is one of the questions I had written down for you. He loved the Aces and Eights storyline that you were a part of, and his question is, how was that presented to you, and was it always the plan for you to be the guy to eventually go against Bully Ray?
Eric Bischoff just pulled me aside one day and said, "Here's the deal. I think I'm gonna add," because the group had already formed and they were already on TV, and then he just said, "I'm gonna put you in this group, and we'll just kind of see how it goes." And I think that's pretty much the way that it ran. Rather than, it was never presented to me early on that we were going to have this big story that culminate. We just didn't know, and we never knew how it was going to end or when it was going to end. It seemed to be going well, and then we had a sort of a changing of the guard, where what's his name, Big John Gaborik came in, and he wanted to end the Aces and Eights thing. That wasn't his. That was an Eric Bischoff thing. That was his baby. And so John Gaborik came in and put the kibosh to it.
Yeah, I always thought it was one of the better storylines that TNA had. I enjoyed watching it, and it seemed like every week there was something new with Aces and Eights that was going on, and then to have Taz being biased to you guys on commentary, I always loved that stable and that storyline all the way around. So going into TNA, you finally win a company's world championship on TV. You are the guy moving forward. How did it feel winning your first world championship?
It felt good, but at the same time, if I'm being completely honest, I was part of the good thing about my wrestling school is I've made just about every mistake possible in life, in wrestling, and I'm able to hopefully tell my students, "Hey, I did this, I tried this, and it didn't work." But I had a chip on my shoulder at that time, and I wasn't appreciative of it like I should have been. And I don't believe it was. I think I had it for about a month, and then I lost it, and then I wanted again, and I still had that stupid chip on my shoulder. And I remember the second time that I wanted, I happened to do an interview the next day, and I said at the time I was just in a bad place, and they asked me, how long do you plan on wrestling? And I said, if I'm still wrestling 5 years from now, somebody please shoot me. And then I said something to the effect of, the belt is just a prop and people backstab each other over it and things like that. And then I remember Vince Russo was like, dude, something wrong with your head. And then they took it off me. Never said anything to me, but like, I'm pretty sure they took it off me. Like, if you don't fucking want it, we'll take it.
Yeah, that's I've actually heard you in interviews tell that story. I always liked the asshole gimmick. It was always one of my favorite, and I love seeing you as world champion. One thing I do want to ask you about: we are in a lot of belt collecting groups, and one of the questions that's always comes up for my guests is, growing up as a wrestling fan, did you have a favorite belt design that you just thought looked better than all the rest? And what were your feelings on the Egyptian style champion, the Jeff Hardy TNA championship?
Well, I wasn't a wrestling fan growing up, so I would say probably my favorite belt of all time was the Smoking Skull belt that Austin had, because I was a huge Austin. When I did get hooked on wrestling, I was the biggest Austin 316 fan in the world. I mean, yeah, I was, and I wasn't introduced to the business yet, so I wasn't a worker. I remember I had a skull in my locker at work that I painted Austin 316 on, and I was crazy about it. What was the second part of that question?
How did you feel about the Jeff Hardy World Heavyweight Championship, the purple one?
I think it's good for it was good for him, but not good for me. I would have preferred the regular TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and I think I'm not sure if they've changed it, but the title that they had when I left that company was one of my favorite designs for a belt I've ever seen. I thought it was really, really a cool belt, and I'm actually in the market kind of looking for a replica so that I can put it in my display case at the academy.
Well, it's
If
and
you
I'm
come
not.
across one, please buzz me.
Well, I actually have a guy who makes all of my custom belts and everything. I can definitely let you know who he is, but he has a business where he makes custom belts. He just made me an AEW belt. And actually, my wife is about to hand me something based off of your answer that I'd really like you to see. But you wouldn't happen to be talking about this one, would you?
Yeah. Now flip it over.
Yep, snakeskin.
There you go. Nice. So, who's the guy that does your belt?
So his name is Eddie Williams. He was the guy who submitted the first comment. Whenever I get off here, I'll send you a message on Instagram with his picture and stuff. But that's literally what he does. He makes belts. He takes orders. He's actually making one for Zicky Dice right now, the current NWA champion. He's making him one on a pink strap. He's doing it completely custom for him. But yeah, it's definitely the guy to talk to.
I have a friend who owns basically a similar company, and he made me a belt for my academy. And he knows that I'm a big Austin mark, so he put the snakeskin on the back.
Very nice. Very nice. So you were in TNA at a time where there were a lot of legends of the business and people who've really done a lot of really cool things to do in the business. Whose learning tree did you sit under in TNA with such a massive talent pool there?
I mean, it was huge. It was Nash, Hall, Foley, X-Pac, Flair, Kurt Angle. I'd say Kurt Angle and Bubba Ray and Jeff Jarrett were probably, and then even Sting. It's really hard whenever somebody asks me a question like that or asks me who's my favorite to work with. I really cannot give that an honest answer because I can't narrow it down to just one.
It's the same as when you ask a fan who's your favorite wrestler of all time. Depending on the day, that answer is going to be different every single time.
Yeah.
So one of the questions we have coming in from
Grado is my favorite wrestler of all time, by the way.
I love Grado. The entrance, everything about it. I've probably watched Grado's entrance 1,000 times in the last 2 weeks.
Whenever I'm angry, whenever I'm in a bad mood, I just watched that Gradoberg entrance on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely.
Where he comes out like Goldberg.
Yeah, I love how the announcers fed into it. And they're like, what's going on here? And then during the Goldberg song, it switches to the Madonna song, and he just goes dancing and goes, no. Grado's a genius. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm glad you said that because doing my homework on you, I found that we have a lot in common. You served in the military, correct?
I did.
Yeah, I was also in the Army as well. If you don't mind me asking, what was your MOS?
It was a 76 Juliet. I was a medical supply specialist, which had a $3,000 signing bonus, I believe.
There it is.
I never actually performed my job though. I went to basic in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Fort Lost in the Woods.
Fort Lost in the Woods, Missouri. And it was winter time too. I went there in October. No, I went there in November. Graduated in December, end of December, like right before Christmas. And then I went to AIT in San Antonio, which was a 5-week vacation basically. But yeah, I never actually performed those duties at my unit. Just odds and ends, security during I would always pull security during our annual training every year.
The JRTC rotations and NTC and stuff?
At the annual training, like, your 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We would do it at, one year we did it at Fort Polk, Louisiana.
I was asked if I would ever go to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I said the only way I'm going to Fort Polk, Louisiana is if Fort Polk is no longer in Louisiana. I had to go there for a 28-day rotation. I enlisted as a 13 Bravo. I was a cannon crew member. But much like you, I didn't get to do my job. 3 weeks after graduating AIT, I took my 2-week leave. I got to my first duty station, which was Fort Campbell. Immediately went to air assault school because it was there on the base, so they sent everybody.
So you were active duty?
I was.
Yeah.
I was.
I was a reservist.
Oh, okay, I got you. And then once I graduated AIT, we're sitting down for PT, and First Sergeant walks in and goes, "Hey, who wants to go to dog handler school?" And I was like, "Hey, that sounds pretty cool, but I'm never going to get it. I'm just a E2 at the time, freshly new to the unit." But I raised my hand anyway, and I luckily was one of the ones to get picked. So my tours were spent as a TED handler, which was Tactical Explosive Detection Dog.
Wow.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, I got to go to work every day with one of my best friends. It was me and a dog all day. Absolutely loved it. We had to go to training in North Carolina, and we were there for 8 weeks. Now, this was a civilian-ran school, so we weren't in a barracks. We weren't on an army base or anything like that. It was contracted through K2 Kennels. K was the first initial of the owner's last name, and it's 2 because it was him and his wife, so K2. But we were 8 weeks in North Carolina, which was pretty much a vacation because the school paid for our hotel, our rent-a-car. We had a contract through some gas station where they put free gas in the car and build the school. And then when we left there, we had to go do 12 weeks in Yuma, Arizona to acclimate the dogs. And then it was, once the training was over in Yuma, it was wheels up to Afghanistan.
Wow. How long were you in Afghanistan for?
I went RIP first, and then I was trails coming back, so I was like 10 and a half months.
You went through RIP?
I was first in and the last one to go out.
That's cool. That's cool.
But
I have a
yeah,
cousin who was a ranger for I think he did like 10 or 11 tours. He was high speed, you know,
very nice.
bad motherfucker.
But so I do want to hit on your time in the NWA. I know we're getting close to that 1 hour mark, but if you guys are having just as much fun as myself and Ken are, please stay tuned. We're just about finished. I won't keep you guys too much longer. But going into the NWA, how were you approached to be a part of that?
Well, I've been friends with Nick Aldis for years, and I've also remained friends with like Dave Lagana, and always had a great working relationship with Billy when he was at TNA. One of my favorite things that I've ever done in wrestling, one of my favorite storylines that I've been a part of, was the one that I had with Bram, and it was very short-lived in TNA. It was like a 5-week program, but it was, you know, that was Billy's idea, and I just loved working with him because he was so open to ideas. You know, we did a conference call, and he said, "Here's the deal. Here's what I'm thinking. Put your thinking caps on, and let's come together and figure some stuff out." And it was really cool. It was a good collaborative effort. And I just think, as an aside, I think Bram is one of the most underrated, underutilized talents in the entire wrestling world. He is just awesome. He looks scary. He's a sweetheart in real life. Unless you piss him off, I haven't been on that receiving end of that yet. But
I have had the very good fortune. I've had the very good fortune to host both Royce Isaacs and Nick Aldis on the same show. I've reached out to Bram or Tom Latimer, and I'm hoping to one day actually be able to sit down and talk to him. I think it'd be absolutely fantastic. Another thing that you've done in your career is you've.
Hang on. What was the question you asked me there before I got off on that big tangent?
How you got involved with the NWA?
Oh, yep. And it was Nick reached out to me and said, "Hey, here's what's going on, and I'd like for you to be a part of it." And I sort of put your name in to be a producer. And it was originally pitched to me that I would help with production, and then, you know, talking to Lagana, it was decided that I would, you know, wear both hats. So I did a little production while I was there, and also talent.
Very nice. Now, one of my final questions for you is another thing you've done in your career is you got involved with acting. You've started a couple movies, and I guess what my question is: do you find it harder acting or is professional wrestling?
Well, acting hurts way less. Yeah, and yeah, I was floored by when I did that movie with WWE Films. It was 20th Century Fox and WWE Films. You know, it had like a $10 million budget. It had a respectable little budget. We had a real, you know, it was a real movie set, and I was blown away by the treatment. I mean, the Screen Actors Guild. You only have to work like 8 hours a day. I remember one night we only had about an hour left to shoot, and the director kept saying, like, "We got to hurry up. We got to get these shots out because we got to get out of here. You know, it's almost 8 o'clock or whatever time." And I just pulled him aside, and I was like, "Hey, man, stay here till we're done." And he was like, "No, that's not how it works here. And it's a big deal if you can only work X amount of hours during a day, and if you go over, you know, it's like you get double your pay, then triple your pay, then like I think up to 5 times your pay for golden time, it's called." And you really have to have a good reason in order to do that in the first place. You know, I had a trailer, and they fed me, and they had catering and things like that, and I was just kind of blown away because I'm used to just, you know, wrestlers, we take care of ourselves. We don't have people carrying our bags for us and stuff like that. So anytime anybody comes with me, and even when I go to do an indie shot in a different state and I fly in, you know, sometimes the promoter will say, "Hey, let me grab your bag for you." And I just, "No, I got it." You know, and I take care of my own bags and stuff. But that was sort of, I loved, that was my my dream when I was a little kid. When I remember E.T. was the first movie that I ever saw, and I remember going home from the theater and saying, "Mom, how do I want to be Elliot? Like, how do I do that?" And my mom at the time was like, "You gotta move out to Hollywood and you gotta know people and stuff, but it's too hard." And so, but I was always into acting and play acting, and there were certain movies that I would watch. My parents had like this drawer full of movies, like that they had purchased. It was Risky Business and Animal House and The Jerk and Raiders of the Lost Ark. There was like 10 movies that were in regular constant rotation, and to this day, I could tell you word for word. I can do the impersonations of the different characters and things like that. I always wanted to be an actor, so it was a really cool thing to be.
Very nice. That's really cool, man. And I'm so, as a fan, I'm so happy for you that you through all the hard work, you're able to live out your dreams and stuff. Now, one final segment here on the show. We have a reoccurring segment that I like to call the Insta Game. Basically, what I do is I take a close look at your Instagram, grab a few pictures that I think are cool or might need a little more context, and get you to kind of tell the backstory on it. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
All right. So the first picture that I found that I thought was really funny, and I would love to get the backstory on or have you explain, is this picture right here. So what's going on?
I don't have any idea. Jeremy, that's Jeremy Borash. Jeremy sent that to me one day out of the blue. He just sent that to me, and I said, "What is that from?" And he said, "I have no clue." He can't remember what it was either. I don't know if I was doing a promo and I just did that. Like, open your eyes, Jeremy. That seems like that would be something that I would do.
That's awesome. So another one that I thought was really funny, and it had another person that I'm a huge fan of, is this picture right here.
Shane Helms.
So what's going on here?
We were in Portugal on a WWE tour, and my buddies, Shane, Matt Hardy, MVP, Hornswoggle, Chavo, a good group of guys that we would always sacrifice sleep whenever we got into a town, because we'd travel a lot, and then we would have like a little bit of downtime. You had the option to either go rack out, get some sleep for a couple hours, or see the sights. You're like, I'm gonna sacrifice sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And so we would always take the time to just go out and see whatever, as much as we could. We had such a fun time walking around Portugal, and we ended up at this seafood restaurant. And I remember Shane doesn't like seafood, so he just ordered like this. He's like, "I don't like seafood. Can I just get a burger?" So they gave him this burger on a plate, and it had this. It was like floating in this mustard soup. Now the other guys that were there with us, there was probably like 5 or 6 of us. They brought like when I tell you, like, there had to be like 10 lobster tails and these giant crabs and every kind of seafood you could imagine, and we just feasted. And then it was expensive. At the end of the meal, it was decided we'll just split the bill up, right? So it was a pretty hefty, I think it was $150-200 each. And they presented that to Shane, and Shane was like, guys, I had this burger. And he was going to pay like $200 for this little burger that was disgusting and floating in mustard soup.
So just a few more photos. One that I thought was really, really cool, and anybody growing up watching the movie Top Gun would have loved to be in this position. How awesome was this experience?
Very cool. That was from a good friend of mine, Johnny LaQuasto, who's actually an announcer now for NXT. We put together 2 tours of Middle East to go visit our troops, and it was just a bunch of wrestlers and Johnny, who's a stand-up comic, and we just went over there and we did like a Q&A and autograph sessions and stuff like that. But we would go to different bases the first year we went to United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and I can't remember the other one. And then the next year we went to Iraq and Kuwait. But that was, I believe that was in Iraq or Kuwait, one of the two. So one of the funny stories for me was we're on these military bases. We're in the United Arab Emirates, and we had a pilot, like a fighter pilot, that was taking us around and showing us all the toys, basically. Like, this plane does this, and he was showing us the technology, and the technology that we have for our military is insane, as you are well aware. And I remember Shane just said, like, why don't you just call up these Taliban leaders and these ISIS leaders and just bring them here and just show them this shit. Just say, here's what you have to look forward to. And Shane goes, and they'll just say, oh, we were just bullshitting you, man.
That's awesome. Just show them your hand.
Scary technology.
So a picture that I thought was really awesome, and that really just stood out to me is this one right here.
Yeah.
Is this the Boston Marathon?
No. That was in New York City. That was Gunner, who's Riker Jackson. Is it Riker Jackson or Jackson Riker?
Jackson Riker. He's also a former Marine.
That one, yes. One of my closest friends in the business. Isn't that funny? He's one of my closest friends, but I can never get his damn wrestling name right.
Funny story. I got his autograph right after yours. I went from you to ODB to Gunner.
Nice. Well, that was the two of us in New York City for Wounded Warrior Project. We're having like a bike ride. So we went. I remember the bike ride began outside of Fox News, and then we went all over the city, and it was a really, really cool time trying to raise money for a good cause and raise awareness for good cause. I'm a big supporter, as you can tell, of our troops.
Absolutely.
I'm still a patriot. So yeah, and then that night, Queen just happened to be in town, so Gunner and I got tickets, and we went and watched Queen at MSG.
What a way to end the day!
And it was, I don't know if you ever, are you a Queen fan at all?
I'm not against them. Not my favorite, but I'm not against them.
So, same here. Not my favorite band in the world, but I like them.
I mean, who can't relate to the song "We Are the Champions"?
Right. But Radio Gaga is my favorite one. Okay, so Adam Lambert is fronting, obviously Freddie Mercury's dead. So Adam Lambert comes out and he sings probably the first 3 songs. And we were looking at each other like, wow, he's good. Like he's killing it. They got the right person for the job. And then Adam they did this cool thing where they had a Videotron and they pulled up Freddie Mercury actually singing. And then Adam Lambert sort of dipped and the band played with Freddie Mercury. And Freddie's just got an amazing voice. And then when Adam Lambert came back after a few songs, I was like, oh, now he sounds like he's doing karaoke. So just, my point of that all is like Freddie Mercury had just a silly, crazy, amazing voice.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot be duplicated.
Absolutely not. And the final picture I want to talk to you about, like we hinted at in the beginning of the interview, you do run a wrestling school, and this picture right here is from your wrestling academy. What are some of the fun yet challenging things you find running a wrestling school?
I think it's trying to figure out how to motivate or teach. Different. Everybody learns differently. You've got. I was a personal trainer for several years, so I always had those. You have those clients that are just like, "Wow, you're so easy. They do everything that you tell them to do. They see results." And then you have the clients who think that I'm a magician and I can just wave a magic wand, and the literal fact of you being here in my presence is going to get you in shape, and that's just not the way it works. But I just trying to figure out how to get everybody to learn. You know, we have classes. We have about 35 to 40 students that are active right now. Granted, they don't all always come at the same time, but then I think one of the most challenging things would be we run a new cycle every 3 months. So I guess having to go back and teach them how to run the ropes, or teach them their footing, and teach them how to take a back bump, and teach them how to lock up, and basically repeat that same process of, you know, nope, not quite, do it this way for a couple days until they sort of start getting used to things. But I really love it. I really do. I never thought I would like it as much as I do. And we have a big family at the academy, and it was just such a positive vibe there, positive work environment.
No, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I asked you for an hour. We've just come over that mark. One final question before we wrap things up. Your academy opened its doors in December of 2016, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Throughout that time, you as the trainer, how does it feel when you see somebody graduate your school and go on to do what they love to do, and knowing that you played a very instrumental part in that?
That's the most rewarding part. It's like we have two kids. They're 6. It's the same thing when they start. They've just recently started reading, and do you have children?
I do. I have 4 boys.
Like when they start doing things, even when they start wiping their own ass, it's like they're doing it. They're doing it. Like it's so rewarding. And I have some students. Success is in the eye of the beholder. We have people at the academy who just wanted to get in a ring and have a wrestling match and blow off some steam and fulfill a childhood dream. We have others who want to go to the WWE or AEW or New Japan, and everything in between. So I got sidetracked.
It's all good.
CTE is a real thing. No, I have terrible memory. What was the original question?
Just the feeling you get when you see somebody that you've trained come from your academy.
It's a great thing, and I have some of my students that are going and doing the tryouts for WWE and doing extra work. And we've had a couple students get tryouts or get enhancement matches on 205 Live, and one of our guys got to wrestle on an NXT show down in Orlando, and it's definitely a proud moment where they're doing it, and I remember the feeling that I had when I was doing that stuff. It's cool.
Well, once again, I can't thank you enough for the time you set aside for us. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching The War Room, presented by Wrestling Review Society. Before we get out of here, Mr. Anderson, please allow everybody to know where they can find you, follow you, and all that good stuff.
Okay. If you're interested in learning how to fall down for a living, I run a school in Minneapolis. Our website is theacademyprowrestling.com. And you can email us at info@theacademyprowrestling.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. It's the Academy SOPW. And personally, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. My Facebook is my Instagram is Mr. Ken Anderson, all spelled out MISTER Ken Anderson. And my Twitter is Mr. just MR Ken Anderson. So
right there, everybody. So just before we get out of here, guys, I'd like to thank Brothers of the Belt, WCW Nation, and Generational Wrestling Society for allowing us to stream their group and making our audience that much bigger. Once again, we are having a 2,000 member giveaway here at Wrestling Review Society. All you have to do is join the Facebook page and subscribe to the YouTube page, and I will give you guys a one-time offer here tonight to thank Mr. Anderson for joining us tonight. If you go and follow him on Twitter and his Instagram page, send me a screenshot of that. I will give you an extra spot in that random drawing when we hit 2,000 members. Also, thank you to A-Rock Designs. She makes all of these awesome cups, hoodies, tumblers you guys see floating around. And yes, the Constitution is in the stripes of the flag. With that being said, guys, thank you to all of our sponsors. Mr. Anderson, thank you so much. And I wish you nothing but the best, you and your family, through this hard time. Try not to get sick, and I can't wait to see what else you got coming up, man.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yep.